So there are many different types of bias, and I want to talk about those a little bit. But the purpose of this training is not to train you on all the different types of bias. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on these, but I do want to skim over them, give you a very quick definition of what these all are. And again, not meant to be a class on what bias, the different types of biases. But I want you, as I'm giving these quick definitions, to think about, be honest with yourself, think about your own life, and try to identify a time where that type of bias impacted you. Either you were biased or someone you know was, but you've seen all of these. You have experienced all of these in your life. So I want you to think of that. I got these from the website at the bottom. I encourage you to go to that site to read up more. He has a great explanation of all of these there. One of the best places I've found in a group where it talks about all these different types in a very concise way. So I encourage you to go there. So let's go through them real quick. Implicit bias. Those are your attitudes. Those are stereotypes. You make decisions completely unconscious of that those stereotypes are impacting your decisions. It's a subconscious thing. The Dunning-Kruger effect. So if you know a little bit about something, you then start to view it simplistically and you believe it's easier to understand than it really is. Confirmation bias. Now that is one that can really impact investigations. That is one we see a lot, where someone develops a theory or has a gut feeling and then only focuses on that and only looks for information that confirms that theory and ignores anything that doesn't. Self-serving bias. We attribute success to positive outcomes. When things go right, that's on us. We did it. But if it's something negative, then it's someone else's fault. So the curse of knowledge or hindsight bias is you understand a principle more now, and so you apply today's knowledge to an issue in the past. So you're judging it based on what you know now instead of what you knew at the time. Optimism, pessimism. We have a tendency to expect positive outcomes when we're in a good mood and negative outcomes when we're in a bad mood. Sunk cost fallacy. That one is kind of like the gambler, at the poker table, who loses a hand, but then goes all in the next hand to win it back and continues down that path of continuing to bet because the next one is going to be the winner. So then we have negativity bias. So negativity bias is when we irrationally weigh the potential for a negative outcome as more important than the positive. Decline bias or declinism is bias in favor of the past over the present, how things are going now. The backfire effect, when we strengthen a belief that's been challenged, we dig in our heels despite the evidence to the contrary or the arguments to the contrary. Fundamental attribution error is when we look for contextual excuses for our failures, but blame others because of who they are. So, for example, I'm a bad driver because my car is acting up or my kids are acting up in the back seat, but you're a bad driver because of your gender or your race. The Forer effect. If there's gaps in our thinking or our knowledge, we fill those gaps to create a complete picture. We fill those with personal experiences or knowledge, not necessarily the facts or the truth. And in-group biases, we have a tendency to be kind about ourselves or people like us when judging, as opposed to others. So that's just a really quick rundown on those biases. Again, as you went through those, did you think of times in your life where those were applicable, where you have experienced those thoughts or those feelings where you've done that? Pretty rare for anyone who's ever gambled to quit after losing, right? The sunk cost fallacy. We've all done that. Confirmation bias, again, very common one in investigations. So think about those, and I encourage you to get more training, do more research on bias, on the types.